Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us. If anybody else joins late, I'm just going to add them to the discussion. So you might see one or two more heads pop in, but it looks like that might be this for now because it's already 7:03. Today, we're going to skip the introduction. So if you want to introduce yourself real quickly when I throw it over to you, that's cool. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to mute everybody right now, and I'm going to call on each person. And then when I call on you, you can share your topic discussion. So today's topic discussion, which was voted on by our Patreon fans, is two albums of a perfect pair. So it's kind of a vague topic discussion. So I'm interested to see all the different routes this is going to take and all the different choices people are going to pick and why they pick those choices. So the first thing I'm going to do, I know Nick is a little low on time tonight. So I'm going to throw it over to Nick first, just in case he has to leave. And then after that, I'll kind of go around to each person. So I'm going to throw it over to Nick. So I've asked you to unmute there. If you want to unmute and give us your two perfect albums of a pair.
Good, Marco. Thanks. Hope you can hear me. My perfect pair is really the theme would be more of the same. I'm going to jump into the 80s prior Contrarian videos. I've been stuck in the 70s. And I'll try to be a little, but I'll still try to be a little more, pick a band that a little less traveled by. Back in the early 80s, there was a little bit of a super group, Fast Eddie Clark, Pete Way. They formed Fastway. Of course, who we're going to get on drums? Jerry Shirley, one of the best around. And of course, a kid by the name of Dave King. And who they get to produce an album but Eddie Kramer. They come up with this album here, self-titled Fastway. That's the name of the band. And of course, and we were talking before the meeting started, you know, it's always good to continue to get album again and again and again. Anyway, lo and behold, in the US at least, they have a minor hit with Say What You Will, which is a rollicking shuffle, which I know Martin is fond of. So, you know, they have a minor hit and they get some airplay, they get some MTV stuff going. And it was a band that I think was talked about as like, you know, sort of quote unquote the next Zeppelin kind of thing. They're supposed to be the next big thing. Of course, we know that Pete Way left actually before recording started. He had some sort of contractual issues or indentured servitude to UFO, but he never sort of recorded allegedly. But so in the first album, it's really a three-piece of King, Shirley, and Fast Eddie. Anyway, so they have this momentum, and they released a second album, which no one knows about. No one talks about. But here's the thing: you got Fast Eddie again on guitar. You've got Dave King again on vocals. You've got Jerry Shirley again, who's one of the best drummers around. And they pick up a guy. It's almost his name is Charlie McCracken. This guy right here. Charlie McCracken used to be the bass player with Taste, or if you're Irish, Taste, with Rory Gallagher. So he had quite the resume. And the second album's called All Fired Up. There it is. And of course, if you see it laying around, you want to pick up another one. And of course, just to make sure, you want to pick up another one. And of course, you get it on CD as well. You also get Eddie Kramer back in the fold, so he produces the thing. And the thing I like about Eddie Kramer, at least as it relates to Fastway and these two albums, is he's got a timeless production, not an 80s production, not silly drums, not silly guitars. The sound of this band is weathered or aged very well. And so you get a sound that's pleasing, I think, even in 2021. I think, and this was my backup choice when we did the last Contrarians meeting, as the album that I defend to the end of the earth or whatever, but I think this album is better than the first album. And so I think it's a continuation. Is it more of the same? Sure. Do you have Son of Say What You Will? Sure, yes, I guess. But the songwriting overall is more mature. The production is fantastic. There's drums for days. There's vocals for days. It's a great album. So if you want sort of that bluesy hard rock, you want guitars, you got Fast Eddie, you want drums, you got this guy who sounds a little bit like Robert Plant. He loves Joplin. I think he's got this kind of like grit in his voice, like the closest I can think of when it comes to Contrarians. When I hear the group talk about music, he's got like a Dio thing going here too. He's got this grit in the voice, but it's a fantastic band. You know, of course, after this album, Fast Eddie on the next album, I think he's in the witness protection program by the time they release this, and they bid it full on with the 80s production and 80s accoutrements. Good songs, but nowadays when I listen to it, even though I spend a lot of time listening to that album, it doesn't age well. Of course, they had some other things that were released, but this is brutal. This is even more brutal. And they end up their career, unfortunately, Fast Eddie, as we know, passed away. But this actually is a bit of a step in the right direction. Released in 2012, Dog Eat Dog. That's a good album, and that was a sort of a harken back to the original sound. And Fast Eddie was found again. But if you want more of the same, bookended together, you get those two albums. You pretty much have everything you need for Fastway. That's what I would consider as my perfect pair. Just as a side note, I got to see Dave King fronting Flogging Molly, which we know he does now, the Celtic punk hard rock. It was a double bill, co-headlining with Social Distortion, a band who I've seen so many times. And it kind of reminded me of the time when I saw UFO and Saxon. Flogging Molly may have stolen the night. Great band. And that guy marched out there and he had command of the stage and command of the crowd in about 20 seconds. And I was watching the guy going, you could tell this guy was an 80s guy. He was just marching around, had everybody sort of spellbound. And of course, I enjoyed seeing a couple of stray Fastway shirts throughout the crowd, but great band, enjoyed them a lot, and my perfect pair.
Muted. Great. I'm muted too. Thanks a lot, Nick. That was very cool. We might go around and do a second choice, so we might come back to you, Nick. For now, I'm going to throw it over to Matt. So I've asked you to unmute yourself if you want to unmute yourself and give us your two perfect pair albums.
Hi, everyone. So I'm picking two albums, not by the same artist, but two albums that I think go together as a pair and that are really great albums. So I'm going with Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, and Blue Oyster Cult, Cultosaurus Erectus. So both albums came out in 1980. They both came out when each band, I would say their credibility and commercial viability was a little bit under siege. And for various reasons, with Ozzy leaving for Sabbath, with Mirrors not being quite what the fans or critics or just radio wanted for Blue Oyster Cult. And both produced by Martin Birch. So I think of these as kind of like backs to the wall records. And both were successful in re-energizing the bands, you know, and I think they both got a little bit of momentum coming into the 80s. Didn't necessarily last that long, but they definitely gave them a shot in the arm. It then led, of course, to the Black and Blue tour. So they got to play together, both managed for a short time by Sandy Pearlman. So you get the Black and Blue tour, which gives you the Black and Blue. I actually brought my VHS out, so you get the Black and Blue movie, and then you get Black and Blue Riot. You get everything you want from a Black and Blue, I guess. And you know, it only lasted those lineups, or not, the lineup for Sabbath didn't even last the full tour. But they get kind of two albums out of this. So I'd almost say a pair of perfect pairs are the follow-ups. So you get Mob Rules and you get Fire of Unknown Origin. Again, they're going back to Martin Birch for both records. Two really good records follow. They both then go on the heavy metal soundtrack. They get you know, both Mob Rules, and you get Veteran of the Psychic Wars on that. And you kind of think things are really gonna go very well for the 80s for both bands. Unfortunately, key members leave in both cases. So you get Dio, of course, going off and doing Dio. Albert Bouchard leaves Blue Oyster Cult. And, you know, they kind of cap it all off, I guess, with the live albums, which, you know, feel a little bit more of a whimper than a bang in terms of going out. I did bring those ones out, right? So you get ET Live and Live Evil for that. So unfortunately, you know, it didn't really carry through, but you know, those records are great. Cultosaurus Erectus was the first Blue Oyster Cult album I got. The lyrics for both of them are, I guess, are a little bit more Dungeons and Dragony than the older stuff that they did. And, you know, it works for, I think, that music. I prefer the lyrics of for both bands, probably the early material, but it totally worked great for the heavy metal soundtrack. And would have liked to have had a little bit more with both bands kind of continuing that momentum. Doing more with Martin Birch would have been great, but those are my choices.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate that a lot. I'm going to throw it over to, oh, I could hear Martin talking. You have to unmute yourself, Martin.
I like how you got 3 pairs out of that, because you got the first one, the second one, and the live albums. I never thought of that 3-way comparison between all of them. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
Live albums. Yeah.
I'm going to throw it over to Grant.
All right, here we go. I'm going with one that's the same band. First, one album came out in 78. The other album came out in 79. Same producer, same engineer. So it was produced by Roy Thomas Baker, and I think Jeff Workman was the engineer. Now, the one album was recorded in the UK, and the other album was recorded here at Cherokee in LA. But both albums have the same sonic quality. You could take all the tracks, put them in shuffle, and they could all fit. So my choice is the first Cars album and Candy-O. Both albums I think are freaking top notch. I like Candy-O better, but both of them have the same type of songwriting. I mean, Rick Ocasek, I don't know, all these, from what I understand, I guess Candy-O, some of the songs on Candy-O were meant for the first album that didn't make it, but I don't know. Both of them are top notch. If I was going on a desert island, I would take both. But that's my choice. Plain and simple. Great records, sound great, interchangeable.
Cool. Excellent.
Cool. That was a quick one.
I try to keep it moving.
Yeah, I guess we're doing one each at this point. We'll see what we've got at the end, right?
Yeah, I've got another one if we go back around.
1 pair each. Okay.
I think we will. I'm going to throw it over to Todd.
Okay, everybody. So I had a bunch of them, but I decided on my main one is one that I didn't think anybody else would pick. And it's these two.
Cool.
1981's The Moody Blues, Long Distant Voyager, and 1983's The Present. I like these two albums of all of the late period Moody Blues albums. These are the two that I think are the highest quality. There's a lot of similarities between them, almost too many, which sort of makes them kind of an imperfect pair, but both produced by a guy named Pip Williams, and I guess his name is Philip Malcolm Pip Williams, and I went through most of my life thinking, I don't know who that is, but when I researched it, it turns out that he was a session guitarist, played on some Sweet records, turned producer, produced Graham Bonnet and Status Quo, and also wrote and produced a couple of songs on Sweet's 6th album. And more recently, he's an arranger for strings and keyboards for the Finnish metal band Nightwish, which is a band I like a lot. And interesting thing about these albums is that they both have gatefold covers that make one picture, which apparently I have read that the Moody Blues invented this, and I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary. Another interesting thing is that on the inside, they are almost the same. Lyrics on the left, and this one is same way. A really interesting thing happens if you take the two gatefolds and put them right on top of each other. I don't know if I can make this come through, but the names of the band members and I think that's showing up, and the band and the credits are all in the same place.
Yeah.
On the two covers, which I think was kind of cool. Both of them are well engineered with mostly acoustic drums, no drum machines. There might be some electronic drums in use because of the time, but I'm not really sure. The first song on both albums are arguably the best songs. The voice on Long Distance Voyager and Blue World on the present. The third track on both albums are a fast single with a dance beat. Gemini Dream on one and Sitting at the Wheel on the other. The last song on side one on both of them is an atmospheric song. In My World on one and Going Nowhere on the other. And there's a big ballad on side two on each with strings. Nervous on one and Running Water on the present. And one of the things that's really obvious about them is, and I could see how people would think this would be a negative thing, was that Ray Thomas, the flute player who sings the occasional song for the Moody Blues, is silent on both of them until the very end. And then at the end of side two, he's got a multi-part suite ending both albums. For Long Distance Voyager, it's Painted Smile, Reflective Smile, and Veteran Cosmic Rocker. And for the present, it's I Am and Sorry. And it's on the present, the suite isn't as good as the one on Long Distance Voyager. The Veteran Cosmic Rocker suite is just really unique. It's got spoken word, it's got circus music, it's got the spoken word, it goes into effects, so it sounds like somebody's going mad. And it's just really, I mean, you get through that album and you think, oh, he's not on this album. And then you get to the very last part of it and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? But really cool albums, solid, good quality. I think if you were to take the best songs from both of them and put them on one album, it would be even much better, because late period Moody Blues albums are a little bit uneven, and these are too. But these two albums were followed by another pair, which I think is not quite so artistically satisfying. The Other Side of Life and Sur la Mer, 1986 and 1988, which are produced by Tony Visconti. And Tony Visconti is supposed to be, you know, quite the accomplished producer, but they've got out of the box drum machines and just I don't like those two as much. I think the quality took a dip. But anyway, those are my two, and I've got another one. So thanks.
Nice. Very cool. Neat analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking that we're going to have time for maybe a second choice from each. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it over to Reed next.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Good. I made some notes this time because my brain doesn't work that well. So basically, I didn't listen to music in the 70s, and then in the 80s, I didn't listen to 70s music except for Black Sabbath and Rainbow, and I listened to those because of Dio. I was a huge Dio fan. So believe it or not, my musical journey in the 21st century has been to rediscover the 70s. So I'm going to talk about a couple of bands that I first heard Christmas 2020. So the two bands or the two albums that I chose for tonight's discussion are Uriah Heep's Abominog and Blackfoot's Siogo.
Cool. Yeah.
So again, I had no background with either Uriah Heep or Blackfoot, so I didn't have any expectations going into these. But when I listened to them, I thought, are these the same band? And they're not interchangeable, but there are a lot of similarities between the two albums now. They're both great albums. They're released within 6 months of each other. Let's see here, September 82 for Abominog and March 83 for Siogo. They both have a much more 80s oriented hard rock sound in their 70s output. People on this channel probably know Uriah Heep had disintegrated. Mick Box was the only member left. So he put together a completely new band. He brought in Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake from Ozzy, although Lee Kerslake had been a Heep member previously. Blackfoot actually was the same lineup, except they brought in ex-Uriah Heep keyboardist Ken Hensley. And then ironically, Ken Hensley, after leaving Heep, puts out an album that sounds much more like 1980s Heep than his classic stuff. Let's see here. I read a quote, I can't remember where, from Mick Box that before the band broke up, he said Ken Hensley was insisting on all of his ideas being used on albums, and that meant that the good stuff and the bad stuff got used, which is why their stuff wasn't so great. And I'm not as tuned into production as some of you guys. These albums are not identical sounding, but they're pretty close. They definitely sound like hard rock recorded in the early 80s. Abominog is the harder album. It's more aggressive. Blackfoot still sounds pretty Southern rock, but there are definitely songs on them that are completely interchangeable. I said, We're Going Down, Teenage Idol, and Driving Fool off of Siogo you could translate those over to Uriah Heep, just have a new guy sing them, and you wouldn't notice the difference. And then ironically, they've got a couple of tracks on Siogo, Run for Cover and Going in Circles. Those sound like 70s Heep to me. Just with, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the lead singer from Blackfoot, but just with the different singer on them. And then on Abominog, the tracks Prisoner and Sell Your Soul, those would go over on Siogo and not even make a splash. So I don't know if it was something in the water, but I think it's fascinating that you have a guy from Uriah Heep join Blackfoot and that both bands somehow become homogeneous, even though they're producing what should have been an entirely new sound.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
Those are my two.
Yeah, both great, tough, hard-hitting 80s albums, right?
Yeah, love them both.
Cool.
Very cool pick. Thanks, Reed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it over to Martin and then Joe, because I know Joe's got a nice story that he's going to tell. So we'll let Martin go next.
Okay. Well, I have a stack here and I didn't know what I should talk about. I mean, it's almost getting to be a cliche that I bring up the Damned and the Clash all the time or too often. So I'm going to put those aside for now, but I could talk about those. But because I'm working on a David Bowie book right now, David Bowie, I picked Let's Dance and Tonight, where he goes very, very commercial. He just decides, on the first album, there's a lot of, it's almost like an ironic version of commercialness, or like I want to embrace the world after being weird for so many albums, Low and Heroes and Lodger and Scary Monsters, which is my favorite. But then, the whole band is kind of gone. You've got Carlos still around, but he embraces 80s production values and a whole new like pastel suit look and, dyed blonde hair, and comes up with this very upbeat, very positive album. He even called it a warm album. But then he kind of does it again. This is his ZZ Top Afterburner, basically. He does kind of the same thing again, and it falls flat. It still sells well, but essentially, he realized later on that he really did not like this period. And the next one you could almost argue is part of it as well, but it's kind of moving away. To me, these two go together because he's trying to recreate the excitement of the Serious Moonlight tour and everything that went with this record over here again, and just do kind of a part two. It's not much different. They didn't have much time to write it. So there's a lot of like redoing Iggy Pop songs from their Berlin days. Neighborhood Threat, Don't Look Down is actually a later. That's a 79 Iggy Pop. He only wrote Loving the Alien and Blue Jean, which is a great song on this. But this was critically panned. And it really is their ZZ Top, or his ZZ Top Afterburner. So this is the weak tea version of this, but they're definitely part of a pair. So there you go, David Bowie.
Cool. Thanks, Martin. Before I throw it over to Joe, I just want to remind everybody who's watching that you can join our Patreon chats too, if you like, if you want to subscribe over at our Patreon page. Any tier will get you access to our Zoom chats, which we do on a regular basis. Before I throw it over to Joe, I just want to mention, I didn't know how many people were going to show up tonight, so I wasn't prepared with my own choice, but I know Joe's got a great story to tell, and he has an honorable mention. So I'm going to let Joe speak for a bit, I actually thought of something that I can do. I don't have a lot of physical material, but I actually have an example that I can show of 2 albums that I could use as a perfect pair. So I'm going to go run and grab those 2 records while I let Joe take it away. And then I'm going to throw it over to Howard after, who just joined us. So Joe, if you want to unmute
Man,
yourself.
so much pressure on me now. I hope this is good.
And I'm going to take off.
Okay.
Keep them going for a bit, distract them for a while. I'm going to run and grab my choice and I'll be right back. Okay.
Grew up in the Chicago area, still live in the Chicago area, and Chicago had a thriving heavy metal scene. In fact, as a contrarian view, I feel our Chicago heavy metal was just as good, if not better, than LA's scene and the Bay Area's scene, but it never got the commercial exposure that it tried to get, and it never happened. So there was one band, they'd have these bills at the Thirsty Whale, which is near O'Hare Airport, where it'd be bands like Trouble, Thrust, Warcry, who never got signed, and then Zoetrope or Zoetrope or Z-Trope. No one really knew how to pronounce the band's name, but they were my absolute favorite. And this is going to go into the story of my perfect pair. This album is fantastic. It's called Amnesty by Zoetrope. Their drummer's Barry Stern, who passed away in 2005. And I used to go see the band all the time. They were the hardest working band in Chicago. They played moose lodges, block parties. They opened up for Megadeth. They opened up for Anthrax. And they were always playing. And I would also run into Barry downtown at one of the record stores in downtown Chicago when he worked a day job at the Board of Trade. And we would always talk music. And I would say, man, out of all the Chicago bands, I love yours the best. And he's like, no way, we're not even close to Trouble. Trouble's the best band. And I'm like, well, yeah, they're good, but they're Sabbathy. They had Christian lyrics. I liked them, but I liked Z-Trope or Zoetrope a lot better. We moved to 1990, where my perfect pair come in. Trouble gets signed from Metal Blade to Def Jam and gets produced by Rick Rubin. And Barry Stern replaces Jeff Olson. Jeff Olson left the band to become a Christian preacher. So Barry Stern joins the band, and they come out with this kick-ass self-titled album, Trouble. And it is just, they took Trouble's sound, but it has Barry beat the crap out of the drums. And he was also the lead singer for Zoetrope. Now, he does background vocals, and he complements Eric Wagner's vocals perfectly on this album. And you have Rick Rubin at his peak, just with the snap production. It's tight. So they took that doom metal sound and made it tighter, more aggressive, punkier, and I love it. 1990, The Trouble. Now, the Twin album is probably going to crack my top 5 of all time. That came out 2 years later. This is Trouble, Manic Frustration. This album went to another level. And it's incredible. It takes classic rock. The opening song basically takes the riff from Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin and just turns it up to another notch and it's called Come On, Touch the Sky. The next song, Excuse Me, the drums that Barry bashes out reminds me of when I'm listening, I'm like, this sounds like Ramblin' Man by Bob Seger, but then it goes into like just incredible heavy metal. And then my favorite tune out of all this is Memories Garden. No, not Memories Garden. I'm sorry, that's another one. I'm having a brain cramp right now. But yeah, it's just an incredible album. What's my favorite song on here? I am drawing a blank. Tragedy Man. It starts out, once again, Rick Rubin's production is just out of this world, incredible. And it starts out with this really cool acoustic riff, and then it just rips into it. So Tragedy Man, that's one of my favorite songs of all time. So these 2 albums are the perfect pair. It's Trouble. They're from the Chicago area. And unfortunately, they've had, the typical band strife. Barry left the band after they couldn't have the commercial success with Def Jam, and he passed away tragically in 2005. Eric Wagner subsequently was kicked out of the band or left the band, but the 2 guitarists, Rick Wardle and the other guitarist, continues on with another version. They play clubs around here, but that was the height of Chicago metal for me, and metal in general. Those 2 albums are just great and complimentary. And I would just like to end and say rest in peace, Barry Stern, because he was genuinely a great guy.
And I actually helped. I went to the University of Iowa, and I used to, when I ran into Barry, I would go, you guys got to play in Chicago. I mean, in Iowa City. And I was able to book him in Iowa City, and Zoetrope came to Iowa City and played a show. But then when he joined Trouble, it took the band to another level, and Rick Rubin production is at its height there. So that's my perfect pair.
Very cool. Excellent. Yeah, good choice for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. I'm going to throw it over to Howard. What's your 2 albums of a perfect pair?
So hard. Really is. I'm trying to find my list right now. Just lost it. Okay, here we go. Sorry, guys. So, I'm a huge Cars fan. Huge Cars fan. So it's probably Kenny O. Cars to Kenny O, and Kenny O or to Panorama. Yeah. It's so hard, man. I mean, then I got Yes, Close to the Edge to Fragile, and then I got Genesis to Trespass to Nursery Crime and Foxtrot, and then to it's so hard. Kansas Left Overture, Point of No Return.
Yep.
I mean, Rush and Led Zeppelin, and it's so hard. Animals, Dark Side. It's not an easy thing to do, and I'll stand by them all.
Cool.
You know what?
Funny. I almost thought of a real challenge would be to try to find which band has the most pairs, right?
Yeah,
which is kind of interesting.
Or maybe a contrarian one would be Gamma 2 to Gamma 3 for me.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise.
But you say Rush, Howard, and it's like Rush has probably 6 pairs in there.
Right? Yeah. That should have been we should have done that. Well, who has the most back-to-backs?
Yeah. Funny. Yeah. All
Thanks.
right, Marco, we've been waiting for your choice. What did you go and haul off?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of physical stuff. I got rid of a lot of I mostly had CDs. I got rid of a lot of them years ago, which is a shame because a lot of them were rare imports, a lot of cool stuff, but I just went strictly digital just to save space. But there are a couple of vinyls actually I do have that were sitting in a box. I'm actually quite a huge Elvis fan. And what I brought as my 2 albums of a perfect pair, probably the only physical stuff I could actually show, is I have 2 live in concert Elvis vinyls. So I have the Aloha Hawaii concert, and I have the CBS special concert. So what makes these 2 albums a good pair is that they're both gatefolds, they both open, they're both double albums, so they both come with 2 vinyls each, 2 record set. They were both filmed, and they're both Elvis. So I figured these would make 2 albums of a pretty good pair.
Nice.
And the thing with the CBS special is I believe it was only ever aired once because I think once Elvis, and it was posthumously, I believe. And I think once he had passed away, I think the Elvis estate decided that it was better not to re-air the show because I think that was near the end of his life and he kind of wasn't looking in shape and he was looking kind of rough. So I think they felt it wasn't a good representation of Elvis. So I believe it only aired once or twice in about 77. And the only way you can watch it now is via bootleg. There are actual DVD releases of Aloha in Hawaii, the 68 comeback special, the old Ed Sullivan performances. On Tour is another one. So there's like a handful of shows that you can get on DVD. There's not a whole ton of Elvis performances that were filmed completely. But if you ever want to watch the CBS stuff, it's on YouTube. You can find bootleg copies of it, but there's no official release, I believe, an official video release of the CBS special, as far as I know. And I think a few years ago, the actual master tapes of the CBS special were sold at an auction with the one caveat that they were never to be released as a DVD or an official release. Because again, I guess the estate isn't happy with the way Elvis looks near the end of his life. But I don't know if this is the record that has the one song on it. What's that song? It's a song from Ghost. something melody.
Unchained.
Unchained Melody.
Unchained Melody.
Go on YouTube and look up Elvis doing Unchained Melody, and it's when he does not look great. He looks overweight. He's sweating. He looks like he's having a hard time, but it's his vocal on that is amazing. It'll almost make you a little emotional when you watch it. He nails that song like 100%. Even at the end of his life when he wasn't looking well, he's still sang amazingly. So look up Unchained Melody on YouTube when you get a chance. But
Cool.
that's my 2 of a perfect pair. I have like 1 or 2 other Elvis vinyls. I have a handful of other stuff on vinyl, but not a lot like all you folks. I can see all your record collections, which look amazing. Other than that, looks like we got a little bit of time. So why don't we go around and do, we'll go for honorable mentions. So why don't we start back at the beginning? Actually,
Yeah, Marco, why don't
honorable?
why don't we like whoever you go around to everybody and just kind of say what you want. It's either a comment or an honorable mention or a quick bunch of honorable mentions, but without a lot of commentary. But let's just make it a kind of a short snapper, say whatever you want kind of thing.
Cool. So why don't we start at the beginning with Nick?
Thanks, Marco. I didn't really have an honorable mention, but as I was sitting here, I had the help of my 9-year-old daughter, Sasha, who's flying around finding albums and CDs. So we did come up with, there we go. Thanks. There we go. There's a band, East Coast Kicks. They're an institution on the East Coast. They're a formidable live act. You're not going to find a better band. I've seen them open, seen them headline. Marco, I saw them open for Fraley's Comet in 1985 with his first tour. Anyway, this album is Midnight Dynamite, produced by Bo Hill. Atlantic did Garbage for them. It was a phenomenal album. It's the band's favorite album. It's great. You got Anton Fig even playing some guest drums on here. It holds up fairly well. It's just been remixed and remastered by Bo Hill. It's just a great album, start to finish. But that's a good one. That pairs well with the album that they finally hit it big with, quote unquote, the hit Don't Close Your Eyes, produced by Tom Werman. Oh no, Tom Werman. But it's a great album. Again, more of the same. Great hard rock. They sort of get lumped into quote unquote, hair bands, whatever. But they're a hard rock band. They're still out there. They're still selling out shows. Formidable band. Fantastic. I've seen them so many times. Great people off stage too. And they still bring it. They're in their 60s and they treat the stuff seriously. Steve Whiteman just released an album that he made during COVID. And it's pretty good, actually. If you can find it, it's been sold out everywhere and it's on back order. But that'd be my honorable mention because
Nice.
They're such an institution.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. Matt, do you have any comments or honorable mentions?
Yeah, I'll go with an honorable mention. I didn't grab any vinyl for it, but my honorable mention would be Husker Du, Zen Arcade, and Minutemen, Double Nickels on the Dime. So I guess it's kind of thematically similar in that kind of tying them time period as my previous ones. So they both came out in 1984. They're label mates. They're both on SST Records. I understand, Husker Du, I think, recorded theirs a month earlier, and Minutemen heard it before it came out, and so they added more songs because they're both double albums, and added more songs to sort of measure up. And I think they came out like only days apart, but they're both great records. They're kind of the sort of best well-regarded college rock albums of the 80s, and very critically acclaimed. For Husker Du, I don't think that's their best album. It's sometimes picked that way. It has filler in it, so there's some kind of the psychedelic stuff goes on too long. Martin, I think I've seen you agree with me on this. That I think they peak with New Day Rising is to me a much better record, and they continue that quality going forward. I do think for the Minutemen, Double Nickels on the Dime is their best records, but they're both terrific, and I think they go together pretty well.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. And how about you, Grant? Do you have a comment, honorable mention?
I've got a comment and honorable mention. For one, Marco, I'm amazed you have no physical media. Amazing.
Not much.
Hey, I'm not judging,
like this,
but I can't operate like that. And two, the Tom Werman stuff with Cheap Trick is freaking phenomenal. That is the best Cheap Trick stuff. I don't care about what you say about George Martin, but I don't care. Okay. Anyway, so my honorable mention. We have a couple albums from 78, 77, 78. Now, different producers, same band, but both are sonically the same. And what I'm talking about is the first Foreigner album and Double Vision. If you listen to them, put them on shuffle, they could blend together. I swear to God, I don't know how they do it. There is totally different studios, different producers. I don't know. It's magic. You couldn't do that with Head Games because Head Games is, well, it's Roy Thomas Baker and it's a crappy production. And it's much more new wavy than these are. But these two albums, you know, they fit together like a hand in glove. There you go. That's all I got.
Thanks, Grant. I should clarify, I don't have any physical music anymore. I used to have a bunch of CDs, but I do have concert DVDs. I have like a bunch of Jimi Hendrix stuff, Elvis, a bunch of Kiss stuff. If you ever check out Tim's Vinyl Confessions, I actually was a guest on
just giving you shit.
I was a guest on Tim's Vinyl Confessions and I showed off my Kiss DVD bootleg collection. I've got a
I
chest
did see that. Impressive.
full of them. Yeah. Why don't we go to Reed? I think Reed was next, right? Or Todd? I'll go to Todd next, and then we'll go to Reed. I think it was Todd that was next, right?
Yeah, I think so. I almost picked this one. I really wanted to pick this pair, but I was afraid somebody else would pick it. It's Genesis, Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering. Both albums were released in 1976. You could mix up all the songs and they would sound like the same album. No Peter Gabriel, but Steve Hackett is still there. My favorite Genesis period. I won't go into an analysis because it'll be forever if I start doing that. My other pairs were Rush, Permanent Waves, and Moving Pictures. Again, I thought somebody else would pick that. The other one that I thought of was Saga's Worlds Apart and Heads or Tails. Both albums produced by Rupert Hine. Sound similar. Again, you could probably mix those up. The sound's a little bit different. Heads or Tails is a really thin production compared to Worlds Apart, but those two, and those are my honorable mentions.
Awesome, thanks, Todd. Reed, do you have a comment or honorable mention? You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
I'll try and keep this concise. Oh yeah, do I have honorable mentions? All right, so first, not enough people in America know about Bjorn, perhaps Jorn. He's Norwegian. So, and this is actually his band. So 2 consecutive albums, The Duke and Lonely Are the Brave, which were probably his best selling albums for what that's worth. But Jorn has a voice like a mixture of Dio, David Coverdale, and the lead singer from Thin Lizzy. I can't believe I'm suddenly spacing on his name. But
Planet.
Yes. Absolutely top-notch metal. And he's got another guy named Jorn playing lead guitar.
I'm on here.
So you get Jorn and Jorn on these 2 albums, and they are just killer. And then, now I brought up Bruce Dickinson's Skunkworks last time, but it's also a perfect pair with Adrian Smith's Psycho Motel. And not enough people know about Psycho Motel. Both of these albums came out in 1996. They're both, of course, from Ex-Iron Maiden members, and they're both grunge influenced. If Skunkworks is Bruce's attempt to be Soundgarden, Psycho Motel is Adrian Smith's attempt to be Stone Temple Pilots. And they are great albums. I don't even know if Psycho Motel is still easily available. You can probably get the imports. They put out 2 albums. They're both fantastic and worth tracking down. And I think they are criminally unknown. Also, I mentioned on the Patreon, going along with David Bowie, he didn't re-record, he was dead. But posthumously, they re-recorded all of the musical tracks for Never Let Me Down. So they stripped off everything except Bowie's vocals, and they came in with Reeves Gabrels and David Torn on guitar. and laid down entirely new musical tracks. And it's only available on the Loving the Alien CD box set, and it is phenomenal. It turns out that underneath all of the 80s crap, there was an amazing album. And I am just obsessed with that thing. It's probably one of my top Bowie albums now.
Reed, I listened to that on your recommendation, and it was amazing. That was a great call.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. And thank you for checking it out, man.
Cool. Thanks, Reed. So we'll go over to Martin. Do you have any comments or honorable mentions?
Yeah, I'll just blast through a few things really fast here. I had The Damned in the Paul Gray era for Black Album and Strawberries. I'll take the plastic off these, but I had The Damned again with Phantasmagoria and Anything for their highly kind of polished goth era. Then I had, I should take the plastic off for these. Again, I'll just do these fast and I won't explain, but you get the drift. Uriah Heep, Demons and Wizards, and Magician's Birthday, I think, go together rather nicely. When we had the Clash doing a double album of universal, planet-saving rock and roll with a triple album of the same thing. Then we had Iggy Pop, The Idiot. Well, here they even put them on one thing: the Berlin Years, Iggy Pop, Lust for Life, and The Idiot. And then I had a list that had King Crimson, Discipline and Beat, Ozzy 1 and 2, Metallica, Ride and Master, Load and Reload, ZZ Top, Eliminator and Afterburner. I thought David Bowie, Low and Heroes. Maiden, I would have gone with Peace of Mind and Power Slave. Nazareth, I think you could go with the two big Roger Glover hits, Razamanaz and Loud and Proud. What else did I have here? I had a couple others here. No, that's it. So that's all I had for honorable. There's a lot of these, right? Like I was saying, Rush has 6 or so. And you could find these pairs kind of all over the place. So there you go.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin. I'm going to throw it over to Joe for any comments or honorable mentions.
First comment, Marco, I love the Elvis. I'm always singing Suspicious Minds. So I think now I'm gonna be quick because I'm gonna be stirring the hornet's nest here. My perfect pair, same singer, different band.
Joe, I'm just grabbing a beer.
All right, Perfect Circle, Eat the Elephant, best album of 2018. Tool, Fear Inoculum, best album of 2019, if not one of the best albums of all time. And the song Numa is perhaps the best song ever made. That's all I'm gonna say. I know there's a lot of rabid fans out there, but you call me contrarian, but that's my perfect pair is my honorable mention.
Good stuff out of the box.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. How about you, Howard? Any more comments or honorable mentions? Or your friend maybe does?
My wife doesn't want me. I'm trying to blur her out, but
high-tech guy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, yeah, I mean, Ozzy, Blizzard, Diary, Uriah Heeps, Abominog, Head First.
Yeah.
Then you have Maiden, To Killers, then Killers, The Number of the Beast, Priest, Stained Glass, to Killing Machine, Hellbent. Of course, Todd, run during any of his records. Foreigner, to Double Vision, MSGs, to Assault Attack, Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here, Animals, Dark Side, A Wish, Animals to the Wall. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, Rush. I can't do it. If it was Contrarian, maybe I could have done it. But I hope those answered what I thought. I've already mentioned the Cars.
Thank God I'm a country boy.
And Laura likes Glenn Campbell.
I think with Priest, I would almost go Rock-a-Rolla with Sad Wings. I'd go Sin After Sin with Stained Class.
Yes.
I'd go Killing Machine on its own.
Yeah.
And then I'd go British Steel with Point of Entry. Yeah. Certainly Screaming with Defenders.
Yes.
Turbo on its own. Ram It Down probably on its own.
Yes.
Painkiller on its own. And then Jugulator and Demolition definitely together.
Yes.
And then I don't care after that. So again, Priest, tons of pairs, right?
Yeah, tons of them.
Yeah.
Tons of them.
They're bulldogs.
All right.
Oh, look how cute he is.
All right. Little entertainment.
You know, it's funny you mentioned Ozzy, and I kind of look at the first 6 records as almost like 3 pairs, you know, because you
Yeah,
got
yeah,
Blizzard
yeah.
and Diary, and then you got
Yeah, you
Bark at the
can
Moon
put
and
Bark,
Ultimate
yep.
Sin and
Bark,
then No Rest for the Wicked and No More Tears. And then
Yeah.
I know Zach played with Ozzy after that, but I kind of look at those first 6 records as almost pair. For
Oh,
me.
I don't know. I just look at it as pair, single, 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 then pair. Like No More Tears and Osmosis pair. And then later on you could find some pairs. But I wouldn't put Ultimate Sin or Diary as part of a pair, or Bark.
No,
at the Moon, I don't think. Just because the personnel changes, you know.
But I'm going to go with something very contemporary for an honorable mention, just because if anybody has not seen the documentary, The Sparks Brothers, check it out. Even if you're not a huge Sparks fan, it's a great documentary. It just came out. It goes through all their history. They're somewhat obscure in North America. I don't think they ever really made it in North America. They were usually more popular in Europe and stuff like that, like Germany, France, and all the England over there. They did quite well for a while. I've known about Sparks for a long time. I'm a fan of Sparks. I'm not a deep fan of Sparks. I love their album covers. One of my regrets is that they were in Toronto maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I found out about the concert after I already had tickets to another show. So I didn't get to see them, and I don't know if they've come back since then. But I wish I could have saw them back. It was like 2013 or 14 or so, somewhere around there. But 2 of the records that they put out that you could almost say are kind of like a pair. And it goes in depth. If you ever check out the documentary, it just came out. It actually talks about this era, which is the Number One in Heaven and Terminal Jive era, which they put out 2 records. It was 79 and 80. And that was after they had already been around almost for like the entire decade. They put out 2 records that were more kind of like electronic, and they were more of like a duo at that time, because before that they were a band, and after that they decided to go back to more of like the band kind of format. But those 2 records are kind of like a pair. Terminal Jive had the hit on it. What was it? When I Want You? What was that song that was on it? It was kind of a hit in Europe. When I'm With You. And then Number One in Heaven had the song Number One in Heaven and La Dolce Vita and stuff like that. La Dolce Vita. There's some good songs on those records. I'm a Sparks fan. I like them. I'm not a deep Sparks fan. I've always wanted to get into them, but they're kind of one of those bands that's a little intimidating because they have so many records and they go through so many different styles. But definitely watching that documentary reinvigorated my interest in them, because I discovered them like 10 years ago and was interested in them back then. Grant, I see your hand. You have to unmute yourself there.
I think they only had the one hit, Cool Places with Jane Weedland, which is phenomenal just as a single. I love that song, but I think that's their only hit that they had.
Well, This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us was kind of a hit in England for a while. And When Do I Get to Sing It My Way in the 90s was a big hit in Europe, in Germany and stuff like that. So they've had a few, but not really I don't think they ever did
Nothing
anything
here. Nothing here other than Cool Places.
Yeah.
At least it got a lot of play on MTV. I remember it always in rotation.
Their album covers are amazing. That's what probably sparked my interest in Sparks 10 years ago, was just seeing their album covers.
Yeah, they had great album covers.
Cool. So we're just a few minutes from it. Did you have anything else to add, Martin, or?
Not particularly. I mean, just on Sparks, it's a band I've always wanted to explore more. I'd like to see that doc. I've owned many of the old vinyls over the years, but I've just never really, dove right in to really learn about them. Like Kimono My House and Big Beat and all that. They were one of the first bands I ever saw on Don Kirshner's or Midnight Special or something. I remember seeing them on thinking they were pretty cool at the time, but just never really, one of those retirement bands, right? Where you feel like I just need 2 weeks, uninterrupted to go kind of study and learn this band kind of thing.
They put out some very interesting stuff. Other than that, if you want to join our chats in the future, you can join us over at Patreon. We do this on a somewhat regular basis, so hopefully we'll see anybody who wants to join us on Patreon next time. And everybody did a great job tonight. I'm actually very impressed. Yeah. And it's actually really cool. I got to show off some physical stuff for once, because I never get to do that. But
love the variety too. Like, tons of great stuff, right? Tons of variety. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
A lot. Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Okay.